Good evening, one and all. Gonna be double checking some stuff here. All right, so make sure audio's working. Yes, it is. Thus we can begin. Pull up let's see here. Pull up the system here to be able to work with. Interesting. All right, that system is working. We're all good to go at this point. Well, tonight we're going to be doing some more with this scene here. Well, with this model. Been in the process of trying to update some of the bricks because I realize there's actually quite a few bricks that I need to add to the collection. That's why it's taking a little bit extra time to do this. We're going into our third day for something that should have taken just 3 hours, because we're trying to get these extra bricks that will actually serve a pretty important purpose as time goes on. Anyway, hope you all have had a still got that echo there. But people can't hear that on the stream. Okay. Greetings, Game Boss. How are you doing? For whatever reason, I can hear those alerts, but Stream Elements and Twitch caused so many problems that, unfortunately, no one else can hear it, but I can hear it. We experienced that problem a long time back, and it has never gone away. As a result, I ended up making my own system to try and pull this sort of stuff off. And that's why we have the ability to instead have our own tool things like that. I gotta change that volume though. Yo, Alaska Man Jeff, how are you doing, Game Boss? And how has your weekend been? It's been a pretty good day up here in Alaska. It's been beautiful weather, which earlier this summer it was getting kind of wet. Sometimes the summers of Alaska can be full of rain, and it looked like we were about ready to start experiencing that. Thankfully, we were spared that for the last couple of days. Excellent. There are there's been quite a few different bricks I've had to work with, and this one right here is actually one of the more frustrating ones, mostly because of what this area underneath looks like. Now, I take the time to actually model these things out pretty thoroughly, just because I hope to be able to utilize it in different ways, including 3D prints, of which I don't have any 3D prints nearby, but I have tried it, and it sometimes works. Unfortunately, when you try and upscale this stuff, you have a lot of problems that can ensue. And I started learning that firsthand. Great vibe, much appreciated. There are a lot of streams out there where they try and do hype stuff, and that's as you can tell right now, that's not me. I don't do hype stuff very well, and I learned that early on in my streams. I got a couple of people that were more interested to come around and kind of just hear stories, and it gave me the opportunity to tell stories with relative ease, and I didn't feel like I had to try to, keep everything like hopping like some other streams. And because of it, I think that it has helped out a lot with some of the community aspects that we have had. But yeah, some months are better, some months are not nearly as exciting, and for the last couple of months, it's kind of been a bit quiet around here. But we've had some good discussions, and that is a positive in my book. It's important to be able to be an encouragement to other people. I learned that when I was kind of getting started, and I noticed there were a lot of people that were coming to the streams that had some, we'll say some baggage. And it gave an opportunity to kind of help discuss some of those challenges that people are going through, and kind of to try and find life lessons in them. A lot of the life lessons I try and drag from my past, but sometimes we get people that have their own stories, and we don't hear people talk about them too much, but there are the occasions where we have had some people come onto stream and tell us some incredible stories. But you don't find that sort of stuff if everything is, high adrenaline. A big challenge. Alright, let's see. We gotta merge these here because we're having problems. This project right here is for an animation that is up and coming. This is for a short called Spooked. Now, it's a fairly simple short. Hopefully it will be done around October. It's going to be fairly simple compared to some of the previous projects. Most of the elements that have been figured out on past projects. I'm not trying to do anything new or fancy other than pacing. And that is probably for the best, because the last episode I've been editing has been taking a long time to finish, and this one will be far faster. By the way, we want to try and bring back some of the streams related to the Blender Challenge. That's going to start happening this at the end of this month. That's for people that are trying to learn Blender, that want to jump in and maybe do some projects, or people that just kind of want to sit and listen and see tips and tricks that they want to use themselves one day. That should be towards the end of this month. I couldn't do it the last couple of times, which I grieve. Unfortunately, that was because of work that I've not been able to really follow through with that. So interesting that you mentioned that, Game Boss, because I think I know what you're referring to, and will give you the benefit of the doubt. But I actually did some things like that in the past, and they didn't go so well. See, I'm a very bottom of the barrel sort of streamer in many ways. I realize that about myself. It is more important to try and connect on a very personal level to folks and give folks the sense that they are getting to interact with somebody who values them as people. Whereas a lot of streams kind of value folks for just the revenue they can make. I don't make ad revenue from these channels. I've been doing this for 2.5 years. 3 years. Just about 3 years. And I have yet to earn any of that money back in the investment. I've spent hundreds and thousands of dollars into this endeavor, but I don't make anything from it. It is all a loss. But that is kind of how it's supposed to be. If you're trying to take advantage of people's finances, you will lose that personal connection, and people will start to resent you. That's where the past collabs came into play. I had some people that were trying to collaborate with me, and they were trying to do it for the finances. They learned very, very early on that I was about as bad of an investment as they could get, because I take this very seriously. And more seriously than I think most people realize. To me, this is akin to a town square, or a mentorship, or anything else that is designed to give people that small town sort of feel. You just walked into a coffee shop and you see this fella off in the corner, and you go up and chat with him. That's the sort of community I want. You can't monetize that. No matter how much you want, it just won't work. The only type of collabs I'll do are ones with people that I am fairly well acquainted with. And that may be you one day. But I have to know more. And collabs are... they're mostly going to be just discussion related. Like I said, I'm a boring fella. But there are some people I know that are very invested into that sort of stuff. And one of those people, I'm going to be, I definitely can say, is DK Christian. He's a fairly good fella when it comes to energetic stuff, and he connects with it really, really well. For me, I'm kind of like the late night guy that you turn on so you can fall asleep while listening to his voice. But yeah, no, I would have to just know the specifics of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Much appreciated. I'll look into your stuff and see where it goes from there. Now, a while back, I used to do some pretty elaborate streams. I was doing roleplay streams, and I actually got invited to apply for NoPixel, and never happened. But it was actually quite something. Actually, have that as a possibility. Ethically, I couldn't follow through with it. There's just too many problems that revolved around it, and it was going to kill the kind of the projects that I had going for art, animation, and storytelling. And it's fine to have things that don't quite pan out. Sometimes the thought of it is all that matters, that you had that opportunity. You know, that being said, I'm not a fan of the streaming world. And I've been a part of it now for 3 years, like I said, just about 3 years. I'm not a fan of it because I don't like what it has been doing to our culture. I think our culture is suffering from our addiction to the online world. That's one of the reasons why I've been such a big advocate for trying to get people to disconnect from the online world and to return to their own local communities, because I think that our communities are suffering because of our addiction to online. There is good that can be done online, but there has to be a clear reason, a clear plan. Now, I had a plan back when I was getting started, but it never actually materialized in the way I was wanting. As such, I started to pull back from it and realized, well, it was a good idea. Ethically, though, I can't follow through with it. To anyone who's watching, have you ever had to deal with that? Something where it looks incredibly promising, but the moment you start digging into it and you start to realize you're going to have to compromise a whole lot to actually achieve it, and then you start to think, maybe I shouldn't do this. If you have that sort of feeling, do you try and reason it out because there's finances involved? Or do you resist and say, no, for well-being of the kind of efforts I'm trying to put into this stuff, I'm going to resist and I'm going to reject opportunities. There was a guy who offered me a big opportunity, and he came up to me and said, we can get rich. And I told him kind of what I just told Game Boss, that about kind of how my mentality is. This guy that approached me, we were talking face to face, and he was all excited because he thought that with my skills, we were going to be able to take his business to the next level. But it never materialized. And he then got very resentful because he thought that I had slighted him. He didn't realize that from the very beginning, I had some ethical boundaries that I refused to cross, and I told him about it too. I said, these are the areas that I refuse to cross, and he said, yeah, I understand that, and I can respect it. But the moment that the money started becoming a question, suddenly he forgot about that sort of thing, and he didn't want to have to deal with my problem of ethics. And I lost out on a great opportunity. He made sure to rub it in my face when it was all said and done, to say about how much I ruined my future. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like I dodged a bullet. A massive, massive bullet. All that to say, sometimes there are decisions that you make in this life, and they don't make sense financially to some people, but they do make sense from a sense of honor and value. So what things do we all put into that category? What are things that we're willing to say, you know what, no more. We won't go past this point. And granted, it's going to change for us over time. Some people are going to have one set of values that are going to shift a little bit into the future. But how do you come up with those? What is it that inspires you and says, for better or for worse, I'm going to do this? And the reason why I wanted to ask about that is because we're in a culture where a lot of people really don't want to ask that question. A whole lot of people really don't want to ask themselves that question. Because in the end, it requires them to lose something. And you have to, if you lose something, well, it becomes a point where you start to feel like you have missed out on something. Hey, greetings, Enigmatic. How are you doing? I was glad to hear that you all are that you're still getting a chance to have your kid looked at, and hopefully everything is good to go in the near future. You and your family have still been in my prayers for the last couple of days ever since I heard about that. And so I definitely want to hear good news over time, but only, when things are really starting to turn around for you all. And I think that it's one of the great parts of being in this modern age is that we have the ability to actually look into that sort of stuff and make sure that people are good to go, not just for medical checkups, but also for getting a chance to hear across the miles about the situations people are in, so that way we can be able to pray without finding out through letters, sometimes days, weeks, or months later. One of the great parts of this modern age. Greetings there, Bastion. How are you doing? They have a very expensive treatment on its way, set to get here on Tuesday. Hopefully it pans out well. One of the biggest frustrations about the medical world is the cost. And hopefully with the current changes in our country, hopefully some of those costs start to come down. And is a bit of a challenge for us all. Okay, why is that not working? Oh, that's why. It's no offset's correct. It's under clamp overlapping. There we go. Okay, now we can find where the problem points are. Aha! There we go. Bingo. Wonderful. Okay, I did not need. How about let's just do this? Limited dissolve. Okay, now it fixed that problem. I guess we'll keep with this sort of style here. This will be good enough for now. Okay, so we put this now with the rest of the parts that need to be exported. Grab this. And then grab this object data and copy modifiers. There was a friend of mine that I had a while back that had a medical concern that was taking place. And he didn't know what it was going to be. He just knew that something was amiss. And I got to see him from early on, and it turned out that he had a form of diabetes, and he was going to have medication with him everywhere he went. It was unfortunate, but at least it was something where he figured it out, and he was able to, start to adjust life and start to thrive again. But then one day, we were traveling, and we were going to a friend's wedding. And because he was brand new to having to deal with the medication, he completely forgot to kind of strap it to himself. And so we sat down for lunch, and got into the car, and he suddenly looks at us in panics and says, "I don't have my medication on me." And we go back into the restaurant, and it's not there. He starts to freak out because he's brand new to this. And so we go on a driving expedition trying to trace all of our steps just to try and find his medication again. It became quite the adventure. But when we finally did find it, it was in the back seat of the car. And suddenly, it was, it changed the whole mood of it. Suddenly it went from panic to suddenly becoming a humorous event, and it became something that we joked with him about throughout the time. It wasn't malicious or anything. It was just silly for the sake of it. All right, stand by just a second. So what just happened here? Something glitched on the communication side. What happened? Pull this up. Okay. Diabetes is rough. My grandmother had it, and my dad has it. Yeah, it is a real challenge. You don't want to have to deal with diabetes. I've had a couple relatives who have had to deal with that. Thankfully, it's starting to become an easier thing to manage. It's not gone by any stretch of the imagination, but it's becoming more manageable. And we're starting to find out the connection with sugar. Man. The sugar problem is so bad. Also, the other chemicals. Thankfully, those are starting to disappear now that we're becoming aware of the threat. But I am. When I first heard about that, it really weirded me out because I thought, what if you then have to deal with it? Because I had seen what it had done to relatives, and I did not want to have to deal with it. And thankfully, I've not had problems with it, but it's in the family line, and so I do know that it is a very real possibility that could happen one day. That being said, one of the biggest sources of diabetes causing problems is from soda. When I found that out, I started to get rid of the soda in my life. Now, I still have it on the rarest of occasions, but for the most part, it's gone because I realized just how dangerous having something as simple as a sugary drink can be. I don't have desserts anymore for the most part. I will still have them. I mean, the sugar isn't evil, but you definitely want to be careful with it. And that was the thing that I learned over the last couple of years, because I made the mistake of not going to the dentist for 2 years. And I had sugar and lemonade. And I went to the dentist and I had a massive amount of cavities. And so I learned the hard way, hey, you need to get the stuff out of your diet. And then I learned along the way, oh, this is also something I need to know about for just because of family lineage. Don't want to have to deal with the diabetes stuff in the future. I also know a lot of people, they got wildly hurt from candy growing up. I know somebody who was growing. The rest of the family is way up here, but the person was growing and growing and just stopped because they ate so much candy. Their body finally just rejected it, and they became forever permanently stunted. And so you see this family, tall folks and then little shrimp. That has happened a couple of times actually to folks. So it's definitely something to keep an eye open for, because you don't want to end up in that sort of situation. Okay, I need to pop this out. This is continuing to act up on me. Okay, there we go. Anyway, all that to say, we are now in an age where we're starting to pay attention to that sort of stuff. And past generations never even thought about it, because we just assumed that companies had our best interests in mind. And suddenly, lo and behold, what? Lucky Charms is not a part of a balanced breakfast. And suddenly we all became wary the hard way that this stuff is hazardous for us. You know, when I stopped drinking soda, I lost 20 pounds from just one season. I got rid of soda from my diet immediately, 20 pounds lighter. It makes me wonder if I cut something else out of my diet, what would happen next. I think I'm probably not going to lose a whole lot more. I do have genes of a Viking, and so I'm not going to be able to lose a lot of weight past this point. But it does make me wonder what else you can cut out that suddenly will improve your health. Seed oils are one of those things. I'm trying to be very careful with that, but it's kind of hard to eliminate that one entirely. But you can eliminate a lot of that by refusing to eat chips. I know Light is probably rolling over in rage for me to say that, but chips are one of the most unhealthy things you can have. Well, I got rid of chips for the most part. I still have them on the occasion, but they're greatly restricted. And thankfully, it wasn't super hard to get rid of that one. The soda was a hard one. It took me months to wean myself off of it. Soda was a hard one. Yep, indeed. Soda, it just works into you. And by the way, I had horrible headaches, and I thought it was a caffeine headache. I was like, man, my head is just aching. I need some caffeine. And I would get some caffeine, and it would slightly fix it. I would have a soda, and it would disappear. It wasn't a caffeine headache. It was sugar withdrawals. I was having sugar withdrawals, which is a bad sign, because that meant I was probably on the road to diabetes. They were getting worse. And so when I got rid of soda, which is almost 2 years ago now, those headaches disappeared. And I felt so much better. Light is rolling over right now. She's seeing prices outside of California. Indeed. Poor Light. We stopped altogether for years. Now I can have one every once in a while. That was a hard one for our culture to get rid of. There are so many people that wanted to keep soda around. And by the way, that the diet stuff, that's also dangerous. I know some people, they were drinking diet and they have a whole new set of problems. It's whenever you do something that kind of is unnatural to kind of the way that God set up nature. That's how I like to think of it. Did God set it up in nature? And if so, then it's probably a good thing. If it came from a chemical factory, it's probably a bad thing. Anyway, that's become my philosophy. Hopefully, we start to see a lot of health improvements in our country. It already does seem like it is working. It's important to remember that a lot of our modern way of living is not healthy. And one of the things that I wish that we could do is have like traditional farm foods. My extended family came from a bunch of farmers. I wish we had more access to farm goods. And so I'm trying to figure out like ways to make that happen for stuff I eat, and so I'm being more careful where I purchase food from. Eggs, for example. Eggs are one where it's fairly easy to get good quality eggs. Meat, for the most part, in Alaska, it's pretty easy to get good quality meat. But anything from the packaged section as well. Like, I didn't know this, but the roast turkey that you find at like a supermarket, wildly unhealthy. But normal turkey is really healthy for you. It's because they put a bunch of preservatives in. And so, yeah, it's a hard one. It is a hard one. There's so many things that we're doing better nowadays, but there's still a lot of areas we need to keep improving if we want to be able to really make our country all the healthier. Gonna try some of the carnivore diets. Ooh, I would like to be able to do some of that. I know some folks where that has actually helped them out tremendously. There we go. I need to actually give the carnivore diet a try. I have some friends that have done it, and they have had a lot of success. I tried doing just high protein diet, and I started feeling incredible by comparison. And so I might have to give that a try this winter as well. Okay, we're going to actually copy one of these elements here. This one right here. There we go. Grab both of those. Isolate. My native people ate almost straight meat back in the day. Indeed. That sort of diet can be very, very good for you. It can also, well, there's the occasion where it can also become problematic, but thankfully, for the most part, it's fairly easy to do. Especially here in the U.S. If you were in other parts of the world, it could actually be quite the challenge to try and have a carnivore diet. I know when we were up in Uktiavik the other day, they have a very heavy meat diet. I won't say that it's the most healthy food in the world. I noticed that there was like some real positive things that they got from it. But it was like also offset with some things that I was like, that's probably not the best option, but it's still better than some of the preservatives you can find. So even though like my stomach couldn't quite handle it, their stomachs could handle it very well. For me, I come from a family line that favors beef and as well as fish and some hearty grains. So not entirely carnivore diet, but carnivore enough based upon like some of the other cultures from like the British Isles where we generally came from. Why is that not working? Turn off the bevel. Let's see if that fixes it. Yep, that was the problem. All right, there we go. So we got that lined up. Now, grab this, grab this. Oh, better double check before we actually start to decimate this. Yeah, it does work. Okay, good. Isolate this. Nope, I don't want that. Back up, back up. Here we go. Grab those. Perfect. Being able to value good food is, well, I didn't quite realize how much my parents stressed about trying to get good food in the past until I was living in the Midwest and I suddenly got introduced to the diets of the people of the surrounding area. Now, I was in Ohio. There is a lot of farm fields in the area. And for whatever reason, they were not eating farm fresh food. It was very, very sad, actually. The people there were more used to eating processed foods. In particular, things that were considered farm fresh, but were actually processed. So they had cheese everywhere. Now, I like a good cheese. It's not my favorite thing in the world. Don't tell Light. But cheese is a fairly good thing to have. Processed cheese is really bad to have. And when I was in the Midwest, everybody had the fake cheese. It was disgusting. I was used to like European high quality cheeses, like ones that had been perfected over 100, 200, 300 years, maybe longer. And here I come to the US and people are eating processed chemicals that are called cheese. I felt so sick after tasting that stuff. And the only thing that I would eat at those sorts of events were, it was the food that no one else would touch. It was the meat. I ate the meat, which actually was farm fresh from the area, but they were all eating the cheeses and vegetables that were cooked in all sorts of oils and were probably incredibly unhealthy. And then there was me eating the one thing none of them would eat. And it showed. Now, when you're eating an entire diet of vegetables and cheeses, and you start to gain a whole lot of weight, you might want to check what you're putting on those vegetables. There is a healthy sort of overweight. I come from a Viking lineage. In Viking culture, there are a lot of people with very big beer guts. That is not considered unhealthy. They are incredibly strong. They're incredibly athletic. But for whatever reason, it's the way that their build kind of processes and maintains energy over time. It is common. So, but if you are not from that sort of lineage, and you come and you're wondering why you can never lose weight, and you're eating vegetables left and right, but you're putting a bunch of sauces on it, you're putting all sorts of oils on it, especially seed oils, and then you're like, why am I gaining weight? Probably the processed stuff. If you get the raw elements, you're probably going to be a lot better off. The vegetables aren't doing this to you. And we're in a culture that really for the last couple of decades now, you couldn't even say something like that. Even if it was with the attempt to try and help people. I had a friend. He was suffering horribly from pain. And unfortunately, his pain was not going away. And it got worse and worse and worse. And I wanted to tell him that You're actually hurting yourself. But I couldn't figure out the words to tell him. This guy could not walk up the stairs. At the age of 20, he had to turn around and walk backwards up the stairs because of an injury. But the thing was that injury started becoming horrible to him. It got worse and worse with every day, to the point of where he had to take the elevator every single time. That was making him weaker. But how do you tell someone like that? A lot of people get offended by that, and you're just trying to be a help. You're like, I don't want to see you suffer. Please, just change this, and you'll start to find a lot more success. But again, how do you tell them that? Thankfully, in our culture, like I said, we are getting better at that. We're not there yet, but we are definitely improving. And hopefully, over the next couple of years, it will finally no longer be taboo to give people encouragement on how to address some of these things. Ouch, I've been there. My wife has had to push me into doctor visits in a wheelchair. Dang, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. Around 10 years ago, I just have to keep moving. See, now, and you have kept pressing on, and that is commendable. My friend, on the other hand, he didn't press on, and as a result, now he's probably forever going to be unable to walk. Normally, in that sense. See, you're an active fella. You have a lot of things that you're doing, and that has helped to really strengthen you, I would dare say. We're all going to have moments of injury, moments of pain, but being able to help one another in those moments of pain so we can get back on our feet is crucial, but we have to always be ready to press on. Thankfully, a lot of folks I know have kind of given me good examples of how to press on, but there's some things like with the food problems where encouragement isn't always welcome. Thankfully, I've not had to be pushed in a wheelchair yet, but there's always next year. I've gotten very close, though, in a couple of times. Now, Enigmatic, for example, he's always going into the outdoors. Really doing what most Americans have kind of become adverse to in many ways. You're able to really deal with the wilderness in a very commendable way. I was chatting with someone a while back about being wilderness savvy. And it is amazing just how few people in our culture are actually unable to really comprehend how to navigate the wilderness in any way, shape, or form, whether by boat, by foot, by plane, whatnot. Almost 18 years now, I haven't been pain-free, but I know one day I'll have a new body, one that won't break, and that is a wonderful thing to look forward to. The I've heard a couple of old folks who bemoan the fact I can never do this again. I'll never be able to use my teeth properly again. Which, by the way, that's me. My teeth are busted, and it is painful for me to eat. There's other people. They're like, I can't walk for the rest of my life. I can't be able to run or hike or do all these other things. And many times they get depressed with that, and they always forget it's only for a time. And then, yeah, thankfully, a lot of people, though, do remember that. I know an older fella, he's got all sorts of pains, but he always has a positive outlook on it. He keeps saying, it's just for a while. One day, I'll have no more pain, and I won't have to worry about it ever again. Isn't that a great thing? That alone is like one of the best things to look forward to in the new heaven and new earth. This is going to streamline this process quite a bit. I'm here at Looking Brother, says Pantheon. Greetings, Pantheon. Hope you're doing well. And thanks for the lurk, sir. There's a guy that I know. His thumb blown off. He was a soldier, and he came back from the war, and this was back in, I think it was Vietnam. He came back from Vietnam, and he had this little stub for a thumb. And he had a great outlook on all sorts of things. Wise man. But sometimes an injury becomes, isn't just a pain that you have to deal with. Sometimes it can be something that becomes a conversation point, and you can be able to lead people into ministry opportunities. And it is something he did pretty well. I still remember a lot of the stories he would tell. Good fella. All right, now we have this. We can be able to join these two together. You know, that's the concept of a new heaven and new earth is something that is one of the most wonderful parts of Scripture. It mentions something that gives us a hope for the future and a peace that one day suffering will end. There are a lot of people in this world that suffer tremendously, and to them, it is a point where it should always be an encouragement. But there are a lot of people where that is not an encouragement to them. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that to them it almost sounds too good to be true. And I can understand that it's a weird sort of concept that people would actually believe that. Especially if you come from a world that kind of is kind of requires to be shown stuff, to be convinced of it. It can be very discouraging. Sometimes we're given pain, not because we're being punished, but because we're being given an opportunity to give people that opportunity to see hope for the future. It's not necessarily a fun sort of position to have to be in, but it is something where we can't forget that might be a matter that may be going on. Why is that? There we go. Now it's merging. Perfect. One of the people that I knew growing up was a guy who had a terrible form of cancer. He suffered tremendously. And, what was very interesting was that he ended up having hundreds of people show up to his funeral because he became so influential to them. He became somebody who kind of thought he was at the end of his rope. And in many ways he was right. But he still found an opportunity to be an influence and an encouragement to others in his sort of position. And a lot of people were incredibly grateful for the impact he had on them. Now he has a new body. Well, or is waiting for his new body, depending on the translation you kind of look at. As well as, I'm sure, a much better reward than many of us will find for his, for the impact. By the way, just a reminder, we have a couple of projects that are coming out. One of them is already finished. I'm in the process of editing it, and I'm being a little paranoid with my editing, so it's probably going to be a little while until I put it out there. But the goal is to put it out before the end of the month, and that is the short story Pharaoh and the Smith. That is a fairly light read, and it is going to be gotta run. All right, have a good evening, Enigmatic. Rest well. God watch over you and your family, and we will see you next time, whenever that is. Anyway, Pharaoh and the Smith coming out relatively soon. Right now, it's just me trying to hammer out wording because this is the first time I've actually done like a legitimate attempt to try and publish. And this is like a very low tier publishing technique. It's not super exciting. God bless and thanks. Indeed, same to you. Pharaoh and the Smith will be an allegory of some kind, and it's about a 20-minute read. Nothing too fancy, but should be enough to be of interest to some folks. And it is going to be free. It is not something I'm trying to put behind a paywall, but there is going to be the option for those that want that. There is going to be a print option as well, and I got to figure out the print option. I don't have that one squared away, but that is a goal for later on after I do the publishing of that, so I can be able to, figure out how to best get into get it all kind of good to go. And I don't know the publishing process. That's one of the reasons why I don't know what to expect. I don't know how long it will take to actually do the book itself, but the online publishing of it should be relatively straightforward. All I have to do is make sure I try and prevent the AI from having a crack at it, which it may be harder to do than I would like to think, but anyway, trying to figure that part out. And I think I have figured it out. I spent a bit of time this spring trying to figure out how to protect written stuff from an AI scraper, and I think I got it figured out using some of the weaknesses of AI, but we'll see. Which reminds me, I need to update the login protection. So currently we do have Stream Radio playing, which allows us to be able to do things akin to this. Anyway, things like that. Well, the login process is actually fairly complex, even though the use of it's kind of simple. The reason why is because it's designed to try and help protect some of the creative projects that come out. Thus, why it is going to be utilized to try and protect some of the written stuff. And there will be an audiobook version of this in the future as well, or a video you can be able to watch about. I don't know what the process will be for it, but it'll be a dramatized audio file. Alright, so now we got this one. We're going to duplicate this and put it over here. Copy all to select. -1. Apply a scale. And recalculate normals. And then delete this one. Perfect. And I delete these two as well. There we go. All right, so these are 2 new bricks. Add that over here so they can go into the library later on. And now we can come back over here and do the swap out. Oh, is the scale right on that? Nope, they're not. Okay, so apply scale. There we go. I I have a lot of self-criticism I'll do for projects I'm working on. And part of it is that I want to try and make sure that the things I work on don't suffer from blind praise. Now, I do like when people appreciate the stuff I do, but I do realize there's a lot of people that will give positive feedback in it. They don't actually believe it themselves. And so I have to be extra hard on myself in trying to figure this stuff out, because I know that this is a tendency with past projects. It's not always guaranteed, but I have experienced this enough to where I can sense, yeah, there's a lot of people that are just being nice about it. Well, you have to be very strict with yourself if you want to try and put something out there for a lot of people to experience. So, that is something where Pharaoh and the Smith is like an introduction to trying to figure that process out, to try and get better with the whole process of creating a project from start to finish. And hopefully avoiding some of the pitfalls that other people can find when they're doing their first publication. I've known actually quite a few people where they do a publication and it doesn't quite go so well. A lot of people, actually. It's pretty popular to try and make books in our culture. And you have to have a really solid idea for it to really thrive. And a lot of people have good ideas, but there's a lot of people that have mediocre ideas. And so that's why you have to be super hard on yourself, because if you make the mistake of creating an idea, investing hundreds or thousands of dollars into it, and you didn't test it properly, you're going to find out very quickly from folks just based upon finances alone. There was a guy that I knew a couple of years back. He had a script that he was trying to turn into a film, and he had spent a lot of time making his script, and it was awful. And I don't say that lightly. It was one of the worst scripts I've ever seen. And not like I've seen a ton of scripts, but it was horrendous. Well, no one had ever told him that it was bad. No one was willing to give him constructive criticism. And that's a big part of trying to be productive and being creative. You need constructive criticism. Not just criticism for the sake of it. It has to be designed to try and help you. Otherwise, it's just people ranting and raving. A friend does not want you to fail. An enemy does. Well, when the guy went to make his film, he spent a lot of money pulling it off. When it came out, people went from praising him and being encouraging to mocking. And it was horrible how bad the mocking got, to the point where he just got out of it entirely. He didn't want to do it again. And I've yet to see him make anything else since then. A lot of money got invested, and he'll never get the chance to try again. I don't want to end up in that situation. That's why I take so long to try and get things figured out. Not because I'm trying to be the perfectionist that A lot of artists are, even though I do have those tendencies. I don't want to make the mistake of squandering a very narrow chance of success. So I gotta find an editor to help me out. It can't just be any editor. It has to be someone who really has an understanding of the field, somebody who is reasonably priced, because I don't want to lose an arm and a leg in the process of trying to do this, especially when I got some bigger projects that I want to do as well. So, but I got to get this process figured out. I have to know from start to finish what it's like to have to go through an editor, but I don't know who. I don't just want a random person. I want somebody that has the wisdom and the care to want to see it through to completion and to give good sound advice. That does not look like a piece I've ever made before. Phooey. Yeah, because it would be over here. All right. Oh, and next Saturday, I'm going to be on After the Weekend YouTube channel. I'll be sharing that on social media later on. It's going to be a Bigfoot stream. And it's kind of interesting. I have had a lot of people now reach out to me over the years asking about the Bigfoot stories. So if you've heard it before, there's not much need for you to tune in. It's going to be a bit of a repeat. But it is going to come with a couple of illustrations this time, and that's the new thing. You're going to get to see a bit of what I saw. They're not like super complex drawings, but they're enough to where you get an idea of what the experience was like. So anyway, that's something to look forward to this next week for those that want to see that. That will happen earlier in the day. Don't worry, it's not like a late night thing. For those that have not heard it, I've had a couple of encounters with the Sasquatch of North America. And I don't try and keep it secret, or I don't try to make it sound like all mysterious and spooky, because it's not. It's an animal. And I treat it like an animal. It's like, oh, hey, there is a creature out there, and we need to be aware of it. So someone was mentioning about, oh, well, does that mean you're like all into alien stuff too? I'm like, no, I'm into things that are that are legit animals. I treat them like animals. We'll be going on for another 30, 45 minutes, by the way. That piece turned out pretty well. Okay, put this back in the corner. Now, swap out the part. By the way, it may seem a little strange that I redesign them like this. And part of it is that when you do it like this, you have more control over it in the future. And I've had quite a few times where I have needed the bricks to be perfectly refined. Now, I don't do it with all of them. Some of the more complex ones I know will take way too long to work with, and so I just kind of let them slide. But there are a lot of them where I do need them to be just so. And so over the years, I've been slowly building up this library of parts. Okay, just a second. Sometimes I'll come across something like this where it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's not exactly the way I kind of want it to be, but then I have the chance to be able to change it relatively easily. There we go. Wonderful. Now it's a lot smoother. Okay. So now, this piece. This piece has already been done. How's that one? There are a lot of parts here that I'm not going to bother with. But some of the larger ones that are kind of upfront and easy to kind of cause problems, I'll change. Or ones like this, where I actually have the part done, it's just in a different dimension. Or actually, maybe it is this one. Oh, it is. Okay, that was easy. And by the way, you'll notice that the colors are askew. That will get changed on the final step of this process. Now, originally I made these bricks for the Lego project, which is it was some fans' attempt to try and recreate the Lego Island game. And unfortunately, they didn't want me to be working on the project anymore, but I had made them all these parts. So I was like, well, okay. So it's kind of interesting that now I get a chance to use the parts that I built for them, because the project never actually went anywhere. Now, there's occasions where that has panned out, where it's like, well, why am I bothering to put time and effort into something? Well, sometimes it's because the use for it is not now, it's later. And you don't know when or where that's going to really be the case. But it's important to be able to do things with joy in your heart. To be able to look at something and say, you know what, I may not be super happy to do this, but it is better for me to do a process with joy and to learn from that process, whether it's actually getting a collection like this you can use for animations in the future, or just because you learned how to deal with struggle. Either way, things are important to experience, even the things that are frustrating. One of the most frustrating moments in my life was college. It was very, very frustrating. But there was another one shortly thereafter, and that was Amazon. Now, I greatly disapprove of how Amazon does their business, but I still did it with as much of a smile as I could do, even though we were treated like pseudo-slave labor. I did it with as much of a smile as I could, because I knew that there is something I'm supposed to be learning from this. Now, I don't necessarily know what that is entirely, but I do know that there were some things that I learned along the way that have been beneficial to me, and one of them is the ability just to endure. The ability to endure frustration has actually panned out pretty well over time. And I actually talked with a student recently who was dealing with the struggle of endurance, and he didn't know how to really do it. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I learned the hard way. But there are a lot of people who have never even considered that, and to them, it's a foreign concept. I thought it was something that most people were already familiar with, only to find out that that is not actually the case. You know the old Snow White song, Whistle While You Work? Well, here's a different way to probably approach it. Be kind while you work. That is a very important thing. There was a guy that I worked with. This was at Amazon. Nobody was happy. Everyone hated life. It was painful. It was frustrating. And we felt used. Horribly used. And there was this one guy who couldn't take it anymore. I was working nearby, and suddenly, this guy broke into tears. Big man. Big, strong man. But he suddenly couldn't take it anymore. And rather than lash out and break something, all he did was sob. When management came by, they shamed him and fired him on the spot for doing that. That's Amazon for you. There's a man who was at his wit's end. He didn't know what to do. He was losing in his finances. He was having all sorts of struggles, and he finally just couldn't take it anymore. You will have people like that. You will have moments like that for yourself, and that's really hard to overcome. But very few of us are going to actually encounter that in that sort of way. Instead, most of us are going to encounter it kind of like another guy that I saw. Rather than just break down with unable to know what to do, this guy decided that he was going to be hurtful and hateful to everyone else. Same business, different month. And he took to verbally harassing people. And that was his way of getting through struggle. But the problem is that now everybody else is struggling because somebody else is having problems with struggling. And suddenly, well, people don't really want to see a person like that thrive. They get resentful, they get bitter. And then there's one last person in that equation. And this is the one that I tried to model my business sort of mindset off of. It was a guy who was having a terrible day, and you could tell it, and he would even admit it. But he still was trying to give of himself, to be kind and courteous, to be encouragement to others around him. We all get a chance to choose how we are going to engage the struggles around us. And it's not always going to be easy. But we have that choice. Endurance is about seeing a problem, acknowledging the problem, but refusing to make another suffer for your problem. In doing so, you will help someone else maybe avoid the pain. You probably help someone else to overcome their struggle. I've mentioned a lot in the past about encouragement. It is important to encourage one another. And it's reasons like that that come to my mind on a regular basis. Oh, I better move that over here. Okay, there we go. Boy, we've got a lot of extra parts this time around. I do find I've been rambling a bit, so again, as normal, my apologies if it is not making any sense. To me, in my mind, it's making sense. I realize it doesn't always come across like that, and I've listened to myself on recording a couple times, and I cringe when I realize that sometimes my rambling ends up being more on the rambling side and nonsensical side than I would like it to be. Most of these other parts we can just kind of let go, because most of them are in the interior. yes, this piece. All right, where is this piece? There we go. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I don't have the mirrored version of that. -1 and scale. Okay, put that in the collection. That's an easy update. Okay. I've been listening to a streamer for the last couple of months, and there's a lot to be said for his approach to things, and there's a lot of things that are kind of like, shouldn't be going in that direction. But there's a lot that I've learned from him in terms of kind of the approach people have to the streaming world. And there's one thing that I have routinely been impressed by, and that is the ability for him to be able to do hype with storytelling. But here's the problem. He has about, I'll say about 30 or 40 stories. He has a very short catalog of stories to draw from. And I've noticed with his streams is that they will become very repetitive over time. And because of it, he's able to lean into the hype of the story because people know what sort of to expect. And it's not a bad thing, but it is interesting to kind of see because it's not a technique that I have really been able to do on these streams. My stories are too all over the place. I have too many things to try and say. And what I try and do instead is try and find a way to weave them together. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it is all designed to try and tell a narrative from start to finish. And if it does work and you find that sort of stuff interesting, well, there is hopefully going to be some stories that you'll be able to see that use that same sort of technique. So hopefully it works out. But I wanted to bring up the streamer because just a second. What happened there? I think I grabbed the wrong one here. There we go. Oh, that's why. Gotta copy modifiers. There we go. Much better. So I wanted to bring up something that was said on one of these streams. He was mentioning about the importance of being good to yourself. And a lot of his stories revolve around that. And I don't agree with that sort of mindset. I don't think that being good to yourself is necessarily a good technique to go through life. I think it many times blinds us to the desire that we should have, which is to improve, to do better, to view ourselves as a work in progress, and to give of ourselves rather than take from another. But it's a very popular sort of idea out there. The idea of being good to yourself. Being kind to one another is something we should all encourage one another to do. But being good is a very subjective thing. Being good to ourselves is very subjective. If I say be good to yourself, does that mean that that should be a reason to go out and eat 24 cupcakes in one go? That's a very legitimate question, because there are some people in this world, they'll say, well, I'm being good to myself. And then they'll do something that is very destructive. Eating several cupcakes in one sitting is one of those things that is more destructive than not. But this idea of being good to yourself is culturally sounds really, really nice. Oh, be good to yourself and everything will turn out fine. Sadly, it doesn't. There's a lot of people, they are good to themselves, and they learn over time that things are not fine and they're actually in horrible misery. Being able to identify when you're struggling is an important thing, but what I wanted to bring up about this is that if you're focused on yourself, you miss out on the opportunity to make your community better. What you're instead doing is you're becoming a depression in your community. You're becoming somebody who wants to take in rather than give out. Prosperity comes from giving or producing. But if you're consuming something, whether it's a dozen cupcakes, or people's attention and affection, if you're taking it all in and never giving of yourself, that's not very good. And it causes a lot of problems long term. I don't like this idea of that there's people in our world that are so convinced that they need to be good to themselves that that they end up making horrible life decisions, ones that end up ruining them in many ways. There was someone I got to see when I was working at the Disney parks. People that were being good to themselves, and they would have the most they would be very overweight people, and they would be going around in scooters, and they would be indulging themselves in the most outlandishly lavished desserts. That's not being good to yourself. It sounds like it's being good to yourself, but that's actually very destructive, and it's a very bad habit. I bring that up because several people do not want that sort of vision of them to be challenged in any way, shape, or form. We have to be willing to accept that we're going to have to give of ourselves to find fulfillment. We can't consume throughout life and expect to be fulfilled. That is filling, but it's not fulfillment. So it's a problem. A problem when a streamer, like the guy that I was referring to, goes about and tells people to be good to themselves when in reality, that may be setting themselves up for horrible failure as time goes on. Rather than be good to yourself, might I suggest being more focused on being good to others than being good to yourself. And maybe you will find that that is exactly what you need for the depression that you have, for the frustrations that you have. I think that that's going to be a far better remedy than indulging oneself at every step of the way. You know, now I'm thinking back to Disney. There are some moments that I still cringe at when I think about it. There are some things I refuse to tell stories about just because I'm still coming to terms with how cringe they were. I will tell the story eventually. I just have to find the right occasion and the right kind of lesson to take away from it, other than just don't be cringe. Well, we're getting close to the end here. We might be back tomorrow. If not, we'll be back on Tuesday. What is the current... Okay, I don't think that there is... Oh, let's see here. Twitch... See if someone's over here. Okay, there's actually people to raid today. That is good. We only have one person, but we will still give that a shot. The Rumble side, we have one person there. By the way, if you are on the Rumble or YouTube side, would you consider either liking or disliking the stream? That way I know that you're flesh and blood, and I can be able to have the knowledge that you gave us some of your time, for which I am truly grateful. If you find anything of merit around here, be sure to mention it. Whether it's the stories, whether it's some of the art that's being done, whether it's some of the community ideas, mention what it is that stands out, so that way we can be able to try and double down on it. I realize we have some times where the community around here has changed quite a lot, and I want to make sure that whoever is around these days gets the chance to really feel like that they get a chance to really benefit from the stuff that's happening. I don't know what the future will hold. But I do know this, that the majority of the stuff that we're doing right now for the art and animation is going to maintain a prominent position in these streams moving forward. But I need to kind of know how much to really invest in other things, because I don't know. I don't know what people are kind of interested in. I used to know, but I don't know anymore. is causing that? Try to do that. Nope, that didn't fix it. Maybe it's this. Nope. What if I do this? Hey, that worked. Perfect. A wonderful piece. There we go. All right, so now we can swap that out. And we have yet another brick for the collection. Man, there's a lot of unique bricks on this one. I've not had this many unique bricks in a long time. On most models, I'll find like maybe 5 bricks. Right now, we are about halfway done with the amount of specialty bricks. I'm just going to quit after this one because the rest of the parts are just kind of pointless to try and do. Well, I take that back. The window has to be done, and these long pieces have to be done. Those are the last ones I'm going to do. The other ones are ones that I can see being kind of repetitive and being used in the future. So right now we had a total of 13 parts. So that means it's going to be a total of about 15 or 16 parts that get utilized, get updated for the library, which is a substantial amount when you think about how many bricks are in this library, which is a total of 548 at this point. That's including the new ones. So yeah, that's a lot of bricks. That's a whole lot of bricks. So it's probably more like 520, just because there's a couple of repeats, and there's some things like the minifigs out here where there's a couple of repeats. So either way, we're bringing the stream to a close here. Thanks everyone for your time. Hopefully you found something of merit today, and if so, be sure to mention that in the comments if you so desire. If not, just a like and dislike is all that matters. On that note, have a very pleasant evening and morning, everybody. Just a reminder, no matter what stage of life you're in, be civil to one another. And let's go and share some civility on the Twitch side with Pantheon. We are going to raid over there, and for the Rumble side, we're not going to be doing a raid because right now there's nobody that's doing art out there right now. So, until next time, folks, have a very pleasant evening.